Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And today we have the very courageous Holly Salisbury, who, when she sent through her bio says Holly is just Holly, which I love. And we certainly are going to explore that. So, Holly, so cool to have you on board. Before we get into learning about who Holly is, can you share a little bit about why you're excited to have this conversation with me today around courage?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I really appreciate you having me here today. Um, I've been listening to your podcast since its infancy stages, and I've heard a lot of different stories of your other guests and things, and I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to come and talk about courage from my point of view. And what excites me is just being given the opportunity to share my story, to share my voice. And, it's like everybody, we all have a very different story and a different place that we come from. I've looking and listening to other, of your guest speakers and things, I can definitely say that's not my life. Hopefully that, part of this conversation will just perhaps be another perspective of, of what a courageous life looks like.
I have to ask this question because I get this all the time. Do you think you've got a story worth sharing in a public forum like this?
Yes.
Thank you for saying yes. You do.
Yeah, I think, for, a lot of people, they would think that their life or their value or their story, has no purpose. But, I'm a really strong believer that every person is born on purpose for a purpose. And, when we share the stories and we, help carry each other through life with stories, then it creates narrative, it creates landmarks, it creates things to look back on, it creates hope. And just to know that someone might not have gone through exactly the same thing but something similar, then it's like, oh, I'm going to be okay.
And that's such a good point too, because even if someone's been through something similar, the way that they've experienced or interpreted that similar event is going to be completely different for so many reasons. So thank you for being brave enough. And interestingly, our background or our connection is because our sons, both called Harry, are mates, really, really good mates. So we've come into each other's worlds because of our sons. But there's so much more to it. And so can you just give us a little bit of a background? Who is Holly? And in that, Holly, you said that you believe every person is born on purpose for a purpose. What is Holly's purpose on this life?
So what was the first part of the question?
Who are you? Who is Holly?
So I am Holly, and I often, I don't come across many Hollies, and so I just assume that I'm the only Holly, and I know I'm not. Um, but I feel like if you have had the opportunity to have a conversation with me, then me just saying I'm Holly is enough. I've got all the titles. I'm a mum, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm an employee. But at the crux of things, I'm just Holly, and I love people and care. And I like to try and just position myself to be aware of what other people are going through around me, and just help them to be noticed and validated. And, what is my purpose at the moment? Like that's one of those questions that I think we've all asked a million times over at different stages of our life. And, and it's quite often a wrestle. It's quite often something that, we ponder on and we fight to know, and we, read books or journal or do all the things to try and work out what our purpose is and what we're meant to be doing right now. Because I think we want purpose so that it gives us like an identity or a connection point. And for me, I've landed that my purpose is where I find myself right now. So who am I connected to right now? What's my environment? And still honoring that seasons change and they close out and new things begin. But, my purpose right now would be to be a wife and be a mum, and, and then to cultivate and just, invest in relationships that are important.
That is beautiful. I tell you why I really love that, Holly, because this is a question that I get a lot of people struggling with. Like, what is my purpose? And everyone thinks they've got to have this big purpose that just they find it and bang, the lights come on and this is what I'm here on this planet at this time to do. And yet, and if that's not something like, solving world peace or, getting rid of world hunger, then it doesn't feel like their purpose is enough, which means they go through life not feeling like they're enough either. So to say that your purpose is right here, right now, as a wife, as a mum, to, nourish conversations and connections that you've got, that is absolutely beautiful. And maybe this is a season, and next season there'll be another purpose. But what a beautiful, beautiful response to that question around what is your purpose. That is just glorious. So how did Holly get to here? Tell us a bit more about your story and where you've come from and what life looked like up till now.
Sure. So I grew up, I'm the eldest of 5, and I've got 4 younger brothers. My mum and dad's relationship was not great. I grew up with a lot of domestic violence, and, navigated those waters as a child to, protect, my siblings and protect myself, and, do my best to support my mum and things. I, grew up in a reasonably normal, government school, got good grades, had different friend groups, and, so it was all fairly textbook. And like I've just been involved in like a been involved in church, and, that was a really good, strong community that I needed growing up and that I still am involved in. Been married for 20 years and here we are.
Okay. Okay. We got a lot of questions to ask here. Okay, we're going to go deep. You grew up with domestic violence.
Yes.
You're the eldest of 5 with 4 younger brothers.
Yes.
Talk to me about what that was like growing up. When did you at any point realize this is not normal? And you realized that because you then went on to say that you had a reasonably normal childhood, and it's like, no. That is not a normal, reasonable childhood. So tell me about what it was like growing up. You've got 4 younger siblings and you've got this domestic violence going on in your life.
Yeah, probably wasn't normal.
So whose is normal, right? Like we've all got versions of our own upbringing, and what is normal?
That's right. Right. So I think like my life in the home. If my father wasn't home, then it was fine. There was peace. There was continuity mostly. Um, but then, in the seasons of abuse, and if you can read up about that, but um, the cycle would happen where dad would be lovely, and then something would happen, and there would be irritation, and then it would eventually come to some pretty crazy violence against my mum. And I guess in those spaces it would be just I did my best to keep the peace. I did my best to make sure that my brothers were fed and got to school okay, that they had food in their lunch boxes. And, then coming out the other side of that season of, where it was pretty horrific, mum's capabilities were very low, and so she would sleep. And so, I would just step up and step in and, manage the family life. And, that was from, oh gosh, like as a 9, 10-year-old, and continued on until I moved out. So and then I guess the consequence of having that type of environment, are we on again? Are we off again? Are we walking on eggshells? Are we are we playing happy families? It wasn't a conducive environment to have friends over, nor was it I think the unfortunate thing about domestic abuse, or just any type of abuse, is that people might see, but they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to engage, and particularly with a child. So like, it wasn't my fault, wasn't my brother's fault, that this was happening in our world, but because other parents were probably looking and going, oh, we need to stay away. So then we essentially suffered the breakdown of external relationships because we couldn't have friends over, or they weren't willing to have the kids that had been were part of that environment. So like, in terms of like a school environment, it was fine, but anything outside of 3:30, it was just be at home, stay together, stay close, in terms of our family, and and just ride the waves.
Wow. So as a 9 or 10-year-old girl, you're literally tasked with raising 4 younger boys, or putting some normality, like you say, packing their school lunches, or, getting them fed. How did you even know what to do? Like, you're a kid yourself. Like, how did you know what to do, or what gave you that courage to actually do that and stand up and take on that role and that sort of responsibility at such a young age?
Mm. Um, I don't know how I knew how to do that stuff. I mean, like, I guess it was also an era where we did have time to teach our kids to cook, and that type of thing. So, and I know, I was just, there was no choice. Well, there was a choice, but I felt that that was at that time my responsibility. And so I just did what needed to be done, because if I didn't do it, then nappies wouldn't be changed, dinner wouldn't be had, school uniforms wouldn't be washed, So it was just a space where I just went, well, it's got to be done, so let's get it done.
Wow. Yeah. And you just did it. You don't even question it. You just did it.
No, well, and like, it was normal for me.
For you.
Like,
Yeah.
now I look back, and even now parenting children of that age, and teenagers, and my husband has to remind me regularly, he's like, the kids don't have your life. You can't put that responsibility on them. Let them be kids. So it's rewiring my expectations and just seeing that they live a very different life to what I did. And so, yeah, it's not fair, it's not right to assume that they should behave in the same way that I had to.
Well, you had to grow up so quickly.
Yes.
So quickly. So,
Yeah.
and not have the normality. How did you go from, like you said before, between the hours of 9 to 3:30, it was school and just normal like all the other kids. But then after school, you go back to a completely different environment. How did you do that?
Um, I think like there's a lot of my growing up childhood and even into my 20s where it was like I was in a bubble and I have not great memory. And so, yeah, like I just ticked it through. But like there's a lot, and I'm not sure if it was just like a protective mechanism or you know, or a or I've just gone, oh, I'm not listening, I'm not engaging in this anymore, and like it's a chosen or a subconscious sort of thing. But yeah, a lot of it I don't remember, and yeah, so it's just, but the bits that I do, yeah, I just remember having to be, yeah, really brave and strong and resilient and yeah, just get it done.
I love that. Just get it done. Yeah. And it's often the case when I talk to people about courage and some go, you know what? I haven't done anything courageous. And then you get stories like this where you got through a childhood like that and you that's courage at another level.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like courage doesn't have to be, skydiving or jumping out of perfectly good planes or off perfectly, normal mountains.
Yeah.
Courage can just be sometimes surviving a childhood that where you're exposed to things that others are not, don't even know about, don't even have to see or hear about ever. So, and as you say, the impact not only on your life behind closed doors as a family, but even on other friendships and other relationships and not having the normality that kids have and, being able to have mates over. That's just such a normal part of childhood.
Yeah. I
You
mean, like
didn't
you
get
look
to
at
enjoy.
our boys are hardly home, or we've got multitude in our house.
Yes, I do remember last week, my Harry said, "Oh, we're going to sleep at Harry's."
Yeah.
And I said, "Who's going?" And he reeled off 6 names. And I'm like, does Holly know about this? Are you serious? You're lumping 7 kids onto her at 5:30 on a Friday night, and she didn't know about it at 4:30.
It's
Um,
fine. It's fine.
but so when you were growing up, okay, because you could have gone either way. You could have gone down the same path and been the victim, or you can turn things around. So talk to me about what that looked like. How did that play out in life? How did you then make decisions, when you got to an age, like when did you leave home? What was some of the process you went through around what direction you took your own life in?
Yeah. Um, yeah, in hindsight, I now look back and, like it was, I guess, put on me that I needed to be home. I needed to be the pillar. That was my responsibility because if I didn't do it, then who else would? And like the consequence of that was that, like, I guess the little girl got put in a box and closed up, zipped up, and she got put away. And um, it it kind of stagnated, I guess, that knowing that I was allowed to have an opinion or I was allowed to have a dream or I was allowed to, have ideas and things that I would like to pursue and be involved in. And, like I remember when I told my mum that I was moving out. And so at that stage, we were living in a country town in South Australia. And I said, I'm moving to Melbourne, and, with the intention to get married to Michael. And it was like World War III had broken out. And it was like, no, you can't go. Like, what am I going to do? And, but I guess that was a moment in time where I was like, well, I can choose here. I can choose to go back to the way things are and live this life of restriction and you know minimal progress and fear, or I can take the risk and get out there, make a choice of my own, and see what happens.
How old were
So,
you?
20. The day
Fruit.
after I turned 20, I moved out. Yeah.
And so why do you think you chose the road of less traveled, the fear path?
Why I didn't choose fear?
Yeah, so why
Yeah.
did you leave?
Yeah. Why
Yeah.
did I leave?
Even though your mum's obviously not wanting you to go.
Yeah. Look, it was a really difficult decision
Mm.
because I knew that if I stepped out, then who was going to be in that role of, what I played in the family home for my brothers? So there was a lot of tension in myself of, well, if I go, who's going to protect? Who's going to look after? Who's going to, make sure that everyone's okay? And, like I said, I did play that role of peacemaker between all the entities. Um, and, there's been a couple of times in my life where I've realized that a sacrifice needed to be made one way or another. And it was either that my joy was to be sacrificed or someone else's joy was needed to be sacrificed. Or even just, a relationship. One way a sacrifice needed to be made, like at the point when I said to my dad, I can't see you, I don't want to speak to you, I'm finished, just give me some space. The conversation leading up to that was I either need to sacrifice my husband and children and family, because when I would interact with my dad, I would just be a mess and useless to be able to, take on the responsibilities, or I sacrifice that toxic relationship for the betterment of my family, and being able to be in that space, which, is my purpose. um, so yeah, that um, those crossroads and those decisions, they're not always easy, and they are layered and they are complicated. But I think taking the time to wrestle with it and to, like, sometimes it doesn't even have to make sense of what your decision is. But if you know and you know her, or you just feel it, in your heart, that, or it's that conviction of, it doesn't make sense, but I just know, take the risk.
Oh, knowing you know her. I love that. I've never heard that before. But Holly, so many people have this knowing in their knower, and they don't listen, they don't act on it, or they don't trust it.
Yeah.
Like, but you did. So at 20, what? Okay, a couple of things. Why Melbourne? And you obviously already knew Michael. I know Michael's your husband. When did you meet him, and how much of this did he know? And again, why did you come to Melbourne? What was he from Melbourne? Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So Michael and I grew up in Horsham together, which is a medium-sized town in rural Victoria. And so we had been friends since we were like 12 or 13 kind of thing. And Michael has always been, I guess, my number one support crew. um, like even as young teenagers, he would ride past my house when the police and the ambulance were out the front and leave little notes in the letterbox for me. And, like, I wish I could come and rescue you. And, this is not okay. And I wish things were different. And so he's just been a constant in my world. And when I was about 18, he came down. He'd moved to Melbourne from Horsham, so he'd gone with his family, like as a 16-year-old, and yeah. So then we rekindled again at my cousin's wedding and started hanging out, and yeah. So it just kind of organically progressed, and just knowing that we had a really strong friendship base, that was nearly 10 years in the making. And knowing that, because he would, even as kids, he was like, I'll never break your heart. And, I love you and I've got you. And he's right. He's never broken my heart. He annoys me sometimes, but
Don't they all though?
but I annoy him too, so it's fine. But yeah, so the reason to move to Melbourne was to begin life with him. So and that also it came to a crossroads. One day where he was like, I think we'd been going out for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something, and he knew, he had a really strong, this is a girl I want to marry. This is a girl I want to spend the rest of my life with. So, one night when he was like, so where are we at? Because I can't keep going if we're not doing this. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And, like within 24 hours, because I'm a processor, I just needed to think about it. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Chips are in, all in. And yeah, so I was like, well, I need to move to Melbourne, need to find a job, start life, work it out. Like, yeah, there was lots of unknowns, but we'd work it out.
Oh, I love that. You're choosing you. You're choosing your joy. So how long from saying yes to him was it that you then had that conversation telling your mum you're going to be leaving?
Um, Maybe about 6 months.
What happened in that 6 months? How did you need that time to process it? Did you need that time to build up the courage to tell her? What happened in those 6 months?
Yeah, it was, I guess, kind of just part of the process. There was that space required to finish off what I was doing well, my employment and those, boring things. But also just to give my family some processing time as well. Like it was a really big deal. And there was definitely like a severance, that needed to happen. And yeah, so it was just kind of like duty of care. And it was in terms of my relationship with my mum, it was tricky. It was kind of like go away but stay, that, and it was uncomfortable, and but we managed. And yeah, we just it it wasn't going to be healthy for me to stay, and it wasn't being true to myself to stay.
So others would have stayed, but not been true to themselves. What was the connection that you had to you that enabled you to be true to yourself? Because that's a lot of self-awareness and a very mature thought or pattern from someone who's only 20.
I I guess my dream and something that was really important to me was and even like as a 17-year-old, I had written a list of, my ideal partner and what I wanted our life to look like. And that was because I didn't want to replicate the example that I'd seen between my parents. And, so I was like, well, if that's what not to do, what is to do? So, like I spent time to think about that. And, I'm forever grateful for a couple that I met as a 10-year-old who, were just so beautiful together, and they still are, what was that, 30 years later, I still know them, and I still know them that to be the people that he, encourages her to speak and to, have a voice and, kind of be strong in the person that she is and adores her. And then she reciprocates, I guess his love and adoration by, honoring him and serving him. And, so it's just for me a really beautiful example of what a healthy relationship and marriage is about. So, so as a 17-year-old, I had that list, and it was, it had always, been a desire to, but to be in a relationship where I was appreciated and adored and treated kindly, without the emotional, physical, mental, all of them
Mm.
abuses. And so that was a, I guess, like a vow to myself, and also, I'm worth this. I'm of value. That's the basic minimum.
And interesting, you said earlier about, like, this little girl was put in a box. The only boxes little girls should go in are Barbie dolls. Human girls, absolutely not. So I guess
Yeah,
this is your chance to then not be that girl in that box. And
yeah,
coming to Melbourne too, probably, a big, that, even if you're coming from a normal functional home, to make that move interstate, albeit for love, is a big enough deal.
yeah.
But you're doing it, moving on. How did your brothers take the news?
They were quite little. So, like when I moved out, they were 14, 10, 7, and 4 months old. So it was pretty hard for them. They were children. They weren't teenagers. They were babies, and traumatized babies. And so, like it wasn't easy for them, but like we are, as siblings, we're still quite connected to one another, and we have a deep appreciation for one another. And like we like to hang out and things, so
Oh, that's
which is
beautiful.
nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so, how has it shaped you as a grown up now? So, having a beginning to life that was the one that you've just described, how has it impacted your life growing up? So, moving to Melbourne at 20 with Michael, and knowing one day you wanted to have your own family and doing all that. Talk to me about how that's all played out, and how you think that beginning has impacted you, influenced your decision making. It held you back at any times, or been kind of the catalyst to push you forward?
yeah. So between 20 and 30 was, when we first got married and we had our children. And, for any parents out there, that they're just kind of pretty brain foggy years. And, it's just wake up, do children, go back to bed, wake up. And um, so, like, I kind of just sort of ticked through those years, worked and did my family and whatever. But it's probably really been in the last couple of years where I'm like, okay, let's have a look at where, and like I feel like it's, time to dream again, and it's time to not reinvent, but just reignite and honor the fact that there's a new season. My children are 15, 13, and 10 now. And so, I'm kind of on the cusp of, I still need to be invested and I still want to be present for them. But I can also start to put a few things in place, to keep living and keep being, and, honoring what my space is meant to be in life. But definitely through the years of from when my first baby was born till now, there has been a lot of rewiring, and like I touched on before, the narratives of what are normal for me, or certain behaviors or certain parenting techniques, and you know and questioning those, not in a judgmental way, not even in a spiteful way, but just, is this actually relevant for my life? Do I want to change things? Do I want to replicate this again? And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of effort and intention to do things differently, because it's so easy to just stay in the same, I guess, rut as what we know. But to grow and to get some new resources, or get some thoughts or an advice from people who are a few years down the track from us. What did you do? How did you manage this? I think it's really useful, and I'm grateful for myself for putting in the hard work. I can see the fruit and I can see the benefits in my family. I can see it and feel it and identify it so much in my personal life. So I think it's worth it.
So what fuels this growth? Where's this come from? So yes, obviously there's something inside, but what do you do? Where's this practice come from?
I think a couple of years ago, I went through a space of burnout, and for anyone that's been in burnout, you know that you're just useless. Can't do anything, and not necessarily, depressed, or, it's not, but just useless. Can't think, can't eat, can't drink, can't do anything, like make silly mistakes all the time. And thankfully for me, and when I went through my burnout space, was when Melbourne was in incredible lockdown seasons. And so it was like this 2.5 year invitation. Okay, Hol, what are you going to do? And I know we didn't know how long each stage was going to be active for. But where a lot of people were doing jigsaw puzzles, or making sourdough, building BMX tracks, I was reading books and listening to podcasts, and stripping back, like everything. So it was uncomfortable and it was hard work, but yeah, just bit by bit, just pull, and with the guidance of different resources and things as well, just stripping everything right back, and then going through a rebuilding stage.
What was uncomfortable about it?
It hurts.
Why
It
did it
makes
hurt?
you look and revisit memories and emotions, and um, it makes you question yourself. And yeah, it's like a broken heart is hard to go back to when you've put some sticky tape on it. And you take that sticky tape off, yeah, bleeds again.
And that bleeding hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that when you were going through everything you were going through as a child, that you went to church. You mentioned church. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
me, what role does that play in your life and from when?
Yeah. Um, so my mum would take us, the kids, to church every Sunday. And, so that was just something that I grew up with, and that um, it was just part of my regular routine. As a teenager, it was a really great space for me to be in, because I had friends in that space outside of 9 till 3:30. um, and if there was a youth event, it created space to go on an adventure, or to do things that were just they were fun, and it was easy, and it was a safe environment. So it was it, it was yeah, it was just an environment that I really valued, and found to be a safe space. And then, like as a 17, 18-year-old, I basically came to a crossroads as to, am I going to choose, to be engaged in faith and, church community, or not? And like I sat with that, and I thought about it. And for me, I couldn't, I could not live with God. Like when I looked back, I, my big rocks and my things that are just undeniable couldn't have been humanly created. And so, yeah, for me, I was just like, no, that's an important thing for my life, and it makes me a better person. It gives me clarity, it gives me focus, and it adds value, and just makes me a better human being. When I take on those practices, or those characteristics, of my faith. So, yeah, and even now, that's still a really big part of my life. And, it's changed over the years, depending on the seasons and stuff. But, yeah,
How has
it's
it
still,
changed?
hey, how?
How has it changed? Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Uh, there's been a lot of time where, like in terms of like a church community, where I've been involved in volunteering and helping running programs, and investing into people really heavily, and community and things. And I like now I find myself, you know Michael is an assistant at our local church, assistant minister. Jesse and Harry have chosen to go to a different church because they don't want to be known as a pastor's kid. And we've encouraged that. We're like, that's great. If you've got your happy place and that's a good, safe space for you and community, then that's awesome. And so, um, and again, coming back to, what my purpose is in life at the moment, it's to, parent and to love and to invest into these three little kids, or big kids. And so, my role for them at the moment is running up and down the highway to get them to where they want to be. And they want to be in church, they want to be with their youth friends, other young teenagers and stuff. So, yeah, it, it's creates a solid foundation to, yeah, just like an anchor, just to keep coming back to.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And interesting that, yeah, they don't want to be at the same church with the pastor.
Yeah,
That's, yeah.
which has been another big narrative to change, because traditionally, you went to the same church as a family, and or you went to the same, it doesn't even need to be church, it can just be any other group. You just go because that's what you always do. But to give our kids permission to do something different, it has created so much peace. It's created so much, so much less stress on a Sunday morning because they want to go, as opposed to, it's just an obligation sort of thing. So, yeah, I guess, if people are listening and, as a family, you're involved in something as a family, maybe just have a listen to your kids. Do they need to just go to a different place and work on their own identity, so that then they can come home and they've got something to talk about, they've got something to go, oh, look at me growing up. Aren't you proud?
And look at you as a role model too, because one of the things you were saying is that you had to really step back and think about, what's your view on this? Is this the right way to do things, or is that not? You had to question everything and then work out what your take on it was. So to then allow that sort of freedom, and that, your kids saw you do this or have heard stories of you do this. So you're allowing them to do that too. It's like your learnings are shaping the foundations for their growth. Yeah, that's absolutely
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
Absolutely beautiful.
yeah,
And so you mentioned over COVID, you did a lot of reading and podcasts and, going through and, working out your identity and doing some dismantling and putting back together again. What were some of the books or the podcasts or the learnings that you got during that time that have really stood out for you as having quite an impact on your life?
yeah. They're probably the main book, and I listened to it as an audio and I read it at the same time. Like, I just absorbed all of it. It's called Believing Bigger, or Believe Bigger, and
Who's that by?
Marshawn Evan Daniels, or Daniel Evans.
Okay. We'll look
We'll
it
put
up
it in the
and
show
put it in the
notes.
show
We'll put it in
notes.
the show
Yep, yep.
notes. um, and yeah, and that book just talks about how, at times in life we get disrupted, and it's often a disruption is something that's not great and it's uncomfortable. And then that process of going into rock bottom. And then she just takes through the journey of looking at your talents versus your gifts. What are the things that are innately in us, slash God given, or what are the things that are learnt skills and, things that we pick up along the way. And it, yeah, just talks a lot about value, and then, dreaming and being creative, and being aware and expecting more. Like, when you go through a hard space, we can kind of close off a little bit, and just to, yeah, allow growth and allow the mindset that you're allowed to have more, you're allowed to have different, you're allowed to have fun and joy and things. At the moment, I've just started reading a book by Holly Ringland. She wrote The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart, which covers the topic of domestic abuse and violence and things. Beautifully written. And yeah, like, if you have lived it, then it can be quite confronting. But the way that I've kind of picked up this, perhaps she has experienced that herself. So she's writing from a place of experience, and it's very beautiful and very poetic. So yeah, I really liked that. But another book that she has just recently released is called The House That Joy Built, and that is exploring creativity and curiosity. And, so it's just, I have a picture of myself at the moment, poking my head out of the box. The masking tape's being ripped off, and there's like a big spiral of rainbow, and just I'm looking for creativity. I'm curious, and I'm like, okay, we're done with grey, done with dull. We're going for colour, going for fun and spontaneity and joy, and it's time for some lightness and hard work simultaneously, but time for some fun.
Well, that's the beauty of life, isn't it? It's, the polarity and the day and night, the light and dark, and you've had enough of the dark now. It's more of that light.
Yeah.
So, what are your gifts? What are Holly's God-given gifts?
I'm kind. I am wise. I see value in people. I identify that.
How do you see that? How does
value.
that play out?
It's just noticing. It's looking outside of yourself, and looking outside of myself, and not just thinking about what's in my own little bubble world, but what's actually going on over there. Is that person, their body language is not great, or there's just something, and that tells a story. Sometimes people, I feel like they just need to be told that they're seen, and to be made aware that they're not just hiding in the shadows, but they're seen. So,
And you would see people and hear people because you weren't seen and heard as a little girl, were you?
no, that's
No,
right.
so no wonder it's a gift of yours.
Yes,
Yeah.
and or if people, growing up, if people assumed or did know that there was, this horrific violence going on in my family home, they didn't do anything about it, or they didn't validate that space. I know that, and that's not okay. Or, for me, it's like, it's not on my watch. I'm actually going to use my voice, use my story, and just show up for people.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I read a book just 6 months ago. I'm just looking at my bookshelf to try and I can't remember the author. The book's called The Noticer.
Okay.
It's glorious.
Okay.
Andy Andrews.
Okay.
And it's about a guy, an older man, who he just notices people, and then he gets involved or intervenes when it's called upon, and just allows them to sit back and creates a new perspective for them to look at what's ever going on through. And I feel like you were just talking, you're him, but in a younger female version. He's an older guy, and it's the most beautiful book. And it's all this story of, believing in yourself and, the perspective you bring to the table and challenging thinking, all done though. And he's called a noticer because he notices other people. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
You notice other people, you give them a voice.
Yeah. And, that's something that in the last few years as well, I've really tried to, so during the COVID years, we all essentially had enough time in Melbourne anyway to go, what do and don't I want to pick up? And so I literally put sticky notes on my kitchen table of all the different areas of what I was involved in. And yeah, what actually do I want to pick up? I left a lot of things on the table. But by doing that, it has created space where I'm not at capacity 100% of the time, but I've got a little bit of breathing space to, have time to notice or even have time to action what I notice. Like a couple of days ago, I was driving home from the gym and it was raining, and there was a schoolboy standing in the rain waiting for the bus, and I was like, oh, that sucks. Anyway, I turned around and I drove back and I got out of my car and I walked up to him. I go, mate, this is for you. And I handed him my umbrella. He goes, what? I go, well, you're getting wet. So just hold it back over your school bag so you can at least protect your school bag. He's like, oh, thanks. Like, he was so shell shocked that someone had, just stopped to giving him my umbrella. And I'm like, it's all right, mate. Just pass it on one day. He's like, okay, I will. I'm like, great. I'll probably never see that kid again. Doesn't matter.
You
But
impacted his life.
yeah.
And he probably will pass that umbrella on. And one day he'll share this story too about this crazy woman on a rainy day. I thought you were going to say you pulled down your window and said, jump in. It's like, no, stranger danger.
No,
You don't pick up strange kids. You gave him an umbrella.
yeah.
Oh, Holly.
So, and
Oh,
but yeah, just not being so flat out and so full. And I don't like the word busy. It's not part of my vocabulary. I use full.
so do I.
Yeah, and or at capacity.
Yes.
So yeah, it's creating a bit of white space. I think is really important.
Couldn't agree more. And so what's next for you then? So obviously you said, your kids are getting a little bit older now. There's a chance for you to dream about what that next season looks like. So what's the next thing where you've got to reach in and find a bit of courage to do? What's that thing on your plate?
Yeah, so I've been wrestling with this a lot in the last couple of months. And after a conversation with my psychologist, I went and brought a unicorn pencil case and all of the colours of the rainbow textures and a big sketch pad. And I've just started to do a brain dump in coloured textures and love heart stickers and unicorn stickers because the little girl on the inside is alive and well and she wants out.
And bring her out. And as a lover of, I buy big A3 books all the time and coloured textures and love heart stickers.
Yeah.
Oh, Holly, I say bring out that little girl and
Yeah.
go you.
Yeah.
Get her out of the
She's
box
been
completely.
so quiet for 40 years. She's been so quiet for such a long time. And I'm like, come on, little one, we've got playtime.
Oh, to Holly and playtime. That is golden. And I get that takes courage too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, we might be having a bit of a giggle about, the pretty little stickers and stuff, but this is courageous.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, good. It's again another layer of work, another layer of just sorting out and being brave and going, nah, I'm doing this because I want more and I want to be a stronger, more capable, more loving, compassionate, kind person. So yeah, let's get it done. And like I had all my pages all unfolded and texters out and stuff, and my boys came by and they're like, what are you doing? I go, dreaming. They're like, whoa. Yeah, and like just to be an example for them, like to have the dollar amount that you believe that you're valued at in this season, with the expectation for more in the future. To have, like, how do I want to spend my time? Who do I want to be hanging out with. You know, like we all would get invitations from people who we don't actually really want to hang out with, but we often oblige that and we hate it. But really, perhaps we should just be a bit more honest and go, look, it's not going to work. I've got a few things on for the next couple of weeks, so I'll touch base with you another time.
Mm.
You know?
No is a full sentence with a full stop.
I read that the other day and I went, circle that. No is a sentence.
So is thank you.
Yes.
Yep. They are full sentences. They do not need, no, because I've got this on and I've got this and I can't make that work. It's like, no, just no is okay.
Required. No justification required.
None whatsoever.
And I think that's also a level of growth that you have to work to and get to, you know, because we are conditioned to give reason or justify or, you know, give explanation. But, I mean, you don't have to be a nasty pasty about it. I was going to say something else. But
we can read into pasty. Yeah. They can have many other versions.
Asterix.
The PG version is the pasty.
Yes, nasty pasty. But yeah, you can still be firm and kind at the same time. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Well, you're proof you can do it. Yeah. You can still have your own dreams. You can be a survivor of things that were not ideal. And you can still go on and be a beautiful, kind, wonderful human that's raising gorgeous children to be the best versions of themselves and have a life that you choose where you're valuing you. And that's absolutely beautiful. That is courageous. And that is not even the start, but such a lovely, that's how I see you.
Yeah.
That's how I see you.
I think like practicing that, that thing of valuing yourself then creates greater capacity. You know, like if I'm good, then I can be good to other people around me. You know, like I know when I'm not in a great space because I can't look after anybody else. So
and people see it.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's watching.
Everyone's always watching.
That's
unless they're
right.
looking at their phone.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Eyes up,
this
kids.
time they're going to be watching you, literally.
Eyes up, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, Holly. I'm so looking forward to seeing the next stages of your journey, and we'll certainly have to have you back when you tell us and share with us what those beautiful drawings of dreams look like and what you did about them, because I know they'll be nothing short of amazing, and I can't wait to hear. So thank you for joining us. You are so courageous, just Holly, and there's no just in that.
No.
It is Holly, full stop.
Full sentence.
Full sentence. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
Ta.